Okay, so we're looking at this problem with these word problems. It's helpful to have a piece of paper to draw out what it's talking about. So we're going to start driving east. So I'm going to say this is our starting point, right? And we're going to drive east. So I'm not great at drawing a straight line. And we're going to drive east for 5 miles. And then we're going to turn left and drive north another 12 miles. So this is definitely not too scale, I would say, but there's two legs of our triangle. So at the end, this would be our 90-degree angle, right? At the end of driving, what is your straight line distance that you're figuring out? So we've got what kind of a problem here? C squared equals A squared plus B squared, or C is going to equal the square root of A squared plus B squared. So this is our A. I guess we can call this our A, right? And this is our B, okay? So we're just going to plug in 5 and 12. So C equals the square root of 5 squared plus 12 squared. So if you do that on your calculator, that's 25 plus 144. So that is the square root of 169. 169 is a perfect square. So you take the square root of 169, you should get 13. So our distance that we drove, straight line, as the crow flies, is 13 miles. So everything's in miles. There we go. Does that make sense? So draw your picture. Down here, we are going to talk about a ladder. The ladder is 24 feet, and we're placing it at the top of a building. And how many feet will the bottom of the ladder be from the building? So here we go. We have our building. It's a tall, skinny building. Okay. And then we have our ladder. Like my drawing? So it is 24 feet, right? And it's leaning against this building. Let's make this building have some slats on it. Okay, so there's our building. It's 90 degrees. Yeah. Okay, so our ladder here. And we want to figure out what this is. So this is what we're figuring out. We know the building is 20 to the top of the building, right? So we have our triangle. We have, I'm going to say X is like A. So we have A, B, and C. We're going to find out what X is. So if we are rearranging this, I'm going to say we're solving, I guess let's just move the A for B. So B squared is equal to C squared minus A squared, or B is equal to the square root of C squared minus A squared. So this is essentially our X, right? So we're going to say X is equal, C is 24, yes, because that's our hypotenuse. So 24 squared, that's a 4, minus 20 squared. So what is our answer? 24 squared minus 20 squared is 176. And this wants it rounded to the nearest tenth. So use your lovely yellow calculators. It will give you that answer if you actually type it correctly in there, which is approximately 13.26. Rounding it to the tenths, it becomes 13.3 feet, right? So make sure you put your units. So draw a picture. You'd be much better at drawing than myself on this tablet, but pictures will help you a lot. So you know what part of the triangle you're trying to solve for. Okay, 3 is a little different because we're talking about an altitude. So definition of an altitude is it goes from part of the triangle and it goes to the opposite side and it forms a 90-degree angle. So we are talking about an isosceles triangle here. So let's say these sides are congruent. And the vertex forms a right angle or a 90-degree angle. So you have, this is an isosceles triangle with a right angle there. Okay, so we're going to take, going from the vertex to the opposite side, we're going to draw an altitude. altitude meets at 90 degrees, and it's going to cut the segments down here, or the base, into 2 equal segments, right? So if the base is 8, it's telling us the altitude is 13. Again, this is not drawn to scale by any means. So this is 13 inches, this is 8 inches. Okay, so what would, we have 2 congruent triangles, congruent triangles, right? So these would be worth, when this base is cut in half, 4, 4 and 4 and 13. So we have 2 small triangles. So we can figure out the perimeter when we figure out what these legs are that are equal. So we really just have one triangle to solve. So our triangle is a 13, 4, and we're figuring out the C. So we're going to use C equals the square root of a squared plus b squared. Yep. So our a and b are 13 and 4, right? 13 squared, 4 squared. Not yet. No, I might. Never know. So that's 185. The square root of 185 is equal to, if we round it to the 10th, I have 13.60, so 13.6. And that is in inches, but we're not done, right? Because we have to figure out perimeter. So each of these is 13.6, 13.6, and this base is 8, because it wants the big triangles, the big triangle, yep. So we figured out these legs, right? So we have 13.6, 13.6 plus 8, right? Make it 8.0. What do we get? So that should be 12, carry the 1, 11, plus 3 is 14, plus 1 is 15, carry the 1, so we should get 35.2. And that is in inches. So let me just double check my terrible writing on this thing. Plus 8. Yep, math is correct. So the perimeter is 35.2. One more problem, and then you have the delta math when I post it. Okay, so a 20-foot ladder is set against the side of a house, so it reaches up 16 feet. So here we go. We have our ladder. Okay, it's worth 20 feet. That's the hypotenuse, right? It's sitting against our house over here. I won't draw, I'll just write things. And the house is 16 feet, right? Up to where it's reaching. If Christian grabs the ladder at its base and pulls it 2 feet farther from the house, how far up the side of the house will the ladder reach now? So we've got to figure out first before we move the ladder, right? So let's say, what equation are we using? We're going to use this one, like b squared, or b equals the square root of c squared minus a squared, because we got a leg, okay? We're figuring out a leg. So I'm going to say x, make that x, I'm going up to this guy, see it, equals the square root of c squared minus a squared. Okay, so let's plug those values in. Our c, our hypotenuse is worth what? 20, yep. And our house is 16, so there we go. So 20 squared minus 16 squared, that is equal to 144. Is that a perfect square?
Yeah.
So that equals 12. So initially, it's 12. Now what are we doing? So we move the ladder, right? And when we move the ladder, the base is going to be 2 feet farther from the house. So the base becomes 12 plus 2, which is 14. Yep, and then this is 20. So now we've got to figure out, okay, our second x, so let's call that a y. We'll call this a y. So we're going to figure out how far up the side of the house is that ladder now. So, okay, so now we're still using this. We'll have y equals the square root of c squared minus, we'll just call it a squared. Okay, so our c is still 20, right? So we still have 20 squared minus 14 squared. So 20 squared minus 14 squared is 204. So the square root of 204 is approximately, if we round it to the 10th, I have 14.28 on my calculator, so that becomes 14.3, and that is in the terms of feet. So that is our final answer. So our y equals 14.3. Okay, so if you double check it, you plug it back in, square 14.3, square 14, that should be approximately 20 squared if you want to double check your work. Okay, let me post the Delta Math, but hopefully just make sure you use either a dry erase board or paper, draw pictures, and ask me questions.